Hi, my name is Kylie. I'm from Stampers Workshop. I'm an independent Stampin Up demonstrator here in Australia. Today we're going to be making a card featuring the Playful Penguins stamp set. This stamp set is so cute. Those penguins are adorable and they have some accessories to dress them up. There are also 5 great sentiments. One that's great for Christmas, one that's great for New Year's, and 3 that are encouraging and friendship based. And that is where we're going with today's card. Is the sentiment we're using is always by your side. And I was looking at that thinking that's a really sweet sentiment. You know, a lot of people could really appreciate a card like that. And so then my imagination went a little bit wild and I thought, you know what? One of those penguins looks like it could be a bit sad. And another one looks like it could have its wing outstretched to sort of give the other one a hug and sort of say, you know, you're not alone, I've got you. So that's the inspiration behind this card. So we do need to do a bit of masking. First up, I've just stamped the penguin onto my Whisper White cardstock, and I'm actually stamping it again onto some Post-it note. It's a full sheet of Post-it note material. You could use masking paper if you have that. I just buy this at Officeworks and I keep a pile of them in my stash. So cut out this shape. Don't give it a border or anything. You want it to be as close to the original, or if even a little bit smaller than the original, because if you do have a border, you'll end up with a white shadow around the penguin, and we don't want that to happen at all. So cut it out. I've spared you the cutting. It did take me a bit of time, but you know, pop your music on or a TV show or whatever and you don't even notice it. Mask the whole thing and then get your other penguin. Now you can see how he's got his little wing outstretched, and I thought, oh, it does look like, or it will once we've removed the mask, because you can see where the little wing is stamped onto the Post-it note. That won't appear, so it will look like it's behind the other penguin. Now I do need to mask this as well because we're going to create some sand, and we don't want to colour in their feet a sandy colour. Yes, we could colour over them with some blends, but this just takes that out of the equation. So I'm using Saffron to create the beach effect. And what's great about that particular shadow effect is that if you just sort of, as you can see, I stamp it down once in full strength and just keep stamping really quite rapidly, and you just get this really great texture. I do go along and I'll add some more texture to this look, but it's really quick. In fact, you can see a little bit here when I take off the masks. Around that one I'm taking off now, you can see a little bit of white, and that's what I mean by that halo. So I could actually cut that a little bit smaller, and perhaps if I'd stamped a little bit slower, I might have made sure, or pressed a little firmer, that wouldn't have appeared. Because I'm now hyper aware of having that halo, I need to get rid of it. So you could come back with some more ink, you could put them matte down again, but because I've decided to sort of add some more texturing and colour to this sandy area, I just grabbed my Saffron in the blends and coloured up close. I didn't really need to do that either, because you can see that I've come in now with the light soft suede stamp and blend, and I'm trying to add some shadows under the feet of the penguins. So I've done that with lines and also texture to the sand. I'm adding lots and lots of little dots. I'm now using the dark soft suede because I wanted that shadow to be even more pronounced. So I'm just adding, once again, some dashes and some dots. When you are doing the dots, try not to be too regimented and uniform with them. You can have some clustered together and then sort of space them out so that they just look a little bit more natural. To be quite honest with you, it is something I struggle with. I tend to be quite uniform, and so I'm working on it. It's practice. I'm now coming in with the light Smoky Slate, and I'm going over all the shadow areas. The stamps usually give you a guide as to where you should add the shadow. Here you can see there's actually quite a lot of lines to indicate where to put the shadow. I was a bit worried that my penguin would end up looking too dark, and you can see it is a fairly dark image after all. So I was a bit hesitant to go over all of the areas. In hindsight, I probably could have gone a little bit further into it, but what's done is done, and it is done. So I've gone over all the shadow areas first with the light Smoky Slate, and then I come over and sort of deepen the shadows closer to the edge and where the lines tell me to put the shadows. You could give a little extra highlight with the light basic black. I think the dark basic black might be a little bit too dark, but you know, give it a go, see how you feel about it. That's the beauty of these things. Colour it or not colour it as you see fit. You know, there are no rules. Okay, maybe an expert says there are some rules, but really just follow the guidance given to you by the stamps, or do what feels right to you, and I think that's all that matters. So I'll finish up using the dark Smoky Slate. When I'm happy with it, what I do then is I come back in with the light Smoky Slate, and I try and blend it together so that there aren't harsh lines or anything like that. And if there are harsh lines after I finished here, I can come in, which is what I've done, with the colour lifter. The colour lifter, it does actually lift the colour. So if you've made any mistakes or anything like that, it can not completely erase it, but you can kind of help push the colour away. So I've gone over these greys and sort of, it softens them. It kind of bleaches them out, I guess. Now, I wasn't sure about what colour to do for the sky. I was making a card earlier and I used Pacific Point, which looks fantastic, but it was a bit brighter than what I was planning to go for here. So I took out my light Pool Party Stamp and Blend. I actually think this is a great colour for sky. All I am doing is colouring the entire background. Don't worry about the fact that there are lines and it doesn't look too great at this stage. Just make sure you add as much colour to the background as you want, as you're happy with. The more ink that is deposited, it saturates the cardstock and sort of blends and does its magic. So you won't have that sort of liney look by the time you've finished. And it's amazing, really. Oh, my other tip though when you're colouring is to make sure that you actually put your cardstock onto paper, because if you do have it on sort of like a plastic background, you might find that it actually pops up and bleeds back into your image, and trust me, you don't want that. If you're not happy with how it does look, you can use your colour lifter to go over the top and sort of, that helps blend it out a little bit. But I think you'll notice by the time we're finished that it comes up looking really well. You'll see that I grabbed a stitched rectangle die because I'm going to cut out the panel. The one I picked out though was a little bigger than the area that I'd coloured, so all I did was go back in with my Stampin' Blends and just add a little bit more colour in the areas that I needed it. I grabbed a bit of post-it note tape, sent it off to my die cutting machine, die cut it, and there's my panel. Okay, we're speeding along now. I'm using the lovely lipstick gingham design from the In Colour 6x6 Designer Series Paper Pack 2018 to 2020. Man, that's a mouthful. You can see that on page 168 of the annual catalogue if you have that. I cut that panel to be 14.4 centimetres by 10 centimetres, and they gave me a 5mm border around a card base, which was also in the lovely lipstick. It looks really good already, doesn't it? That'd also be really good colours for Christmas as well. I'm going to spare you what I did next. I actually covered the entire decorative panel in dimensionals, but I spared you that because I'm one of those who likes to put a lot of dimensionals. And I die cut a heart from the Stitch Labels die set. I've missed the rest of the footage, so I'm sorry about that. But in case you were wondering where this heart came from, it came from about there. Okay, let's do the sentiment. Take your black cardstock, use your embossing buddy to get rid of anything. You don't want white sticking in places you don't want it to stick. Sometimes that happens anyway, but it just helps. I also use a paintbrush to sort of get rid of any flecks that I see, but it's easy to miss them. At this point, don't forget to put away the embossing powder and put the lid on so you don't knock it over. take your heat tool and melt the embossing powder on the sentiment. I love watching it melt. It always looks so good, and you will know when it's done. If you're not familiar with embossing, you can actually see it melt. Okay, we're using another label die from the Stitch Labels dies, and it looks great. I love that. I think it's going to be one of my favourites. I've already used it a few times and I only just got the die set. I want the sentiment to hang over the edge of my stamped panel, so I need to put just one Stampin' Dimensional on the edge, and the rest of it can just be normal adhesive because I want it to be flush. I'll spare you taking off all of those backings of dimensionals, but my hint is if you have trouble with it, get some tweezers and use your tweezers. It just makes it so much easier. You can see now I'm just trying to position the panel into shape. Don't press it down too firmly until you're 100% sure of where you want it to go. Otherwise you have no hope of moving it. But because I'd literally just touched it down, I had the option to move it quickly. Doesn't always work this way. I'm using the fine tip glue pen to add some adhesive to that heart that I was telling you about, that I lost the footage to, and I ummed and ahed about where it should go. In the end, I thought it should just be near the sentiment, and there you go. That's my finished card, on the outside at least. Generally, whenever I use a card base that's coloured, I will add a panel of white to the inside and then add some sort of decoration. If it's a white card base, I might just stamp on it directly, but certainly if it's coloured, then I like to add a white panel. Often I will add a stamped image, or I might add some washing tape or some patterned paper. It really depends what I've been using for my project. So for this one, I've decided that I'm going to stamp the penguins. I've gone for the same penguin that looked a little bit sad, and I stamped it off the edge, and then I've masked that as well because I'm going to stamp the other penguin quite close. Now this time I'm using not the same penguin that I used on the front, I'm using the third one from the set because I wanted them facing the same way. And I had to mask it because obviously I didn't need the wing to cut across the front of that other penguin. And that's all I'm doing. You could stamp another sentiment inside, or you could add another die cut heart, or just a really thin strip of that patterned paper. I think that would look really nice as well. It's my finished card. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.